There's no problem at all with context.
Now your name, please. Your name.
Montague.
No.
I think.
Into the microphone.
Yes, my name is Montague. There's no problem at all with context-dependent utterances, and I don't see why we don't get them out of the way. It's true. Well, so let's take, for simplicity, one special type of context dependence on the moment of utterance. I'm talking about sentences that contain tenses. Take the sentence, it is raining. It's quite right. It's not reasonable to apply the predicates true or false to that sentence type. But that doesn't mean that formal logic is inapplicable to it. What other notions, what things might we be interested in? We might be interested in logical truth as applied to tense sentences, or perhaps even more, the notion of a valid argument. Let's, for simplicity, consider the notion a sentence P follows from a sentence Q. And let these be sentence types that involve tenses. How might we analyze this notion? Well, it's simple. Clearly, we should not speak of the truth of a tensed sentence in a model, but rather the truth of a tensed sentence in a history, which is a kind of sequence of models, at a moment. Now, what does it mean to say that P follows from Q? Well, it means that for every history H and every moment T, if Q is true in H at T, then P is true at H and T, in H at T. So there's no problem of analyzing logical consequence for tensed sentences, and this and a similar kind of analysis can apply to any other known sort of context dependence. One substitutes for the moments the context.
Is it a statement or a hope? Is what you said right now a statement or a hope?
This is a statement. Work of this sort has been done by people in Los Angeles, and in addition, Dana Scott. So there have actually been a few publications on this score, completeness theorems. I think one can say that this goes beyond hope. Now, the point was raised by several previous speakers. The question was raised whether we ought to consider tokens or types in this framework, in this connection. The people in Los Angeles, as well as Dana Scott, of whom I have spoken, always considered sentence types, and therefore considered not the notion of truth, but truth at a context, or truth with respect to a context. However, it was Professor Tarski who pointed out to me that actually it's totally irrelevant whether one considers tokens or types. One can do it either way. And as a matter of fact, suppose that you know all the notions as applied to types. Then, as Tarski pointed out, one should identify a token with a pair consisting of a type and a context. Now, if you know what it means for a type P to be true at a context T, then you can apply the absolute notion of truth to the pair consisting of the type and the context, in other words, the token. So I think this, again, is a useless quarrel to try to decide whether one should treat types or tokens. Well, so these are really incidental remarks that occurred to me while people were talking, but as far as the main points are concerned, Well, the question is whether the techniques of formal logic are applicable to natural language. Like Professor Stenius, I'm not entirely sure that I understand this question at all. However, let me give one possible interpretation. It would be that simply no one has yet given completely precise and reasonable definitions of such notions as truth, logical consequence, logical truth, so that they will apply to sentences of English, arbitrary sentences of English. Well, that's quite true. We do have good notions of this sort that apply to a certain proper subclass, to a certain assortment of sentences of English. I deplore this distinction between formal languages and informal languages. What we have really is the case of notions that have been precisely defined for a certain small part of English. This is what logicians have done. Now, for definiteness, let's consider just one notion, logical truth. How would we extend this notion to a more extensive portion of English? Well, I can think of many ways of doing it. One might introduce extremely complicated logical rules, but it seems to me the most hopeful way of doing it would be as follows. One has to work at two problems simultaneously, really. On the one hand, one has to extend the range of formal notions. This means there's nothing sacred about the first-order predicate calculus. One should extend one's formal treatment beyond this, and people have, to modal logic, tense logic, pragmatics, this more general theory I was talking about, intentional logic. I think all this is quite hopeful, and as a matter of fact, to a great extent already done, as far as the areas I've just mentioned are concerned. So one should on the one hand extend formal treatments more widely. On the other hand, and this is where the primary weakness now is to be found, one should give an exact notion. One should try to extend the notion of synonymy in an exact way, and in such a way that for a large class of English sentences, one will be able to find synonymous representatives within the class of sentences to which formal rules have been, to which the formal notions have been shown applicable. Now, I'm happy to hear Professor Katz say that this is one of the objects of structural linguistics, that is the aim of developing rules of translation of, let's say, arbitrary sentences of English into that part of English to which formal rules have already been made applicable. I say I'm happy to hear him say that because I've sometimes been at a loss to determine what the aim of structural linguistics is. Now, so I say that these two directions are the ones that I believe ought to be pursued in order to solve the problem President Bar-Hillel raises. I see no theoretical reason whatsoever why one should not hope for complete success. Two very short comments. I would like to add to the list of accomplishments given by Mr. Potts, a list of positive contributions in the area of application of formal logic to argumentation in ordinary language. And it seems to me that these are rather clear-cut cases. One is the argument given by Epimenides. I think it was Tarski who showed how to apply formal logic to this argument. Another is the Richard paradox. I hope I have it right. I believe the Richard paradox, the one that's this sentence is not provable because if it were, it would be false, and that's my proof. This is the paradox to which you see, this is what Mostovsky calls Richard's paradox. That's what, as much as I know. But what is it? Oh. Well, you see, there are two Richard paradoxes. No, there are two Richard paradoxes, you see. I believe that, I'm not sure, I would swear. No, it's much older. Well, but, another eminent logician applied formal methods to that paradox, and quite consciously, and that was Gödel. And in neither case were the results entirely unsatisfactory. Well, so that's the first comment. The second is the very interesting point raised by Mr. Dummett. Now, I think really that the existence of vagueness in ordinary language does raise a different kind of problem than those that have been considered extensively by logicians. And this is a case that I think that one cannot hope to treat by consideration of paraphrase rules. Well, now we must distinguish between ambiguity and vagueness, and I believe that the treatment that Professor Katz outlined is exactly what one should use in connection with ambiguity. But by vagueness, I mean the existence of predicates that are for which there are instances, for which there are objects to which the predicates neither clearly apply nor clearly do not apply, and the existence of sentences for which, again, there are kind of borderline cases and with various shades of applicability. However, it just occurred to me that this is probably the proper, so one can't hope to treat these by paraphrase rules, but instead one should work at the opposite end. This means one should develop the model theory in a formal way of vague languages. Now, it just occurs to me that probably this has already been done under the name of many-valued logic, and indeed continuous valued logic.
With all due apologies to Tarski, exactly the very same definition you quoted in the name of Tarski was given by me 21 years ago in a paper on indexical expressions in mind, and I'm not quoting it for any reasons of priority, which is irrelevant, but to indicate that I have some grave doubts as to that definition, which were given by John Lyons, because I believe very definitely with him that the type token distinction is inapplicable to either sentences or statements, but makes only sense with regard to utterances, and that this, if possible, could perhaps be still more clarified.